I was called in by the nurse at the gynecologist I'm seeing. There, Kim, I really didn't want to talk about it, but the nurse didn't seem to want to say it. But she made up her mind and said to me, "You should divorce your husband as soon as possible." I was surprised, but I was even more surprised by the reason the nurse gave. That conversation led to an incredible conclusion for our family. My name is Kim Clarkson. I am a 26-year-old office worker. I married Greg, my husband, 3 years ago, and am living a happily married life. Greg is a very kind man and took care of my parents. My parents liked him very much, and they quickly agreed to our marriage. We have a good family relationship, but there is one person I have a hard time with: my sister Tiffany. Tiffany is very selfish and only cares about herself. She's the reason I've had past boyfriends taken away from me. My mom was strict with Tiffany, but my dad was extremely lenient with her. This only made Tiffany more self-centered. I didn't want Tiffany to steal Greg away, so I finished the nuptials while she was gone. I tried my best to keep Greg and Tiffany from seeing each other, but I never thought such a thing could happen. Later, one day, I felt very sick at work and fainted. I was rushed to the hospital where I was examined and learnt a shocking fact. "Kim, are you okay?" Even though I was at work, my husband rushed to the hospital worried about me. I actually told Greg about the test results. "I'm pregnant." Greg hugged me when I told him about my pregnancy. "That's great. We're going to have the baby we've always dreamed of. I'm so happy," Greg said. And then Greg suggested, "Right, we should tell your parents about the pregnancy. I'll go with you." Of course, I agreed to Greg's suggestion. Later, when my health had stabilized, we told my parents about the pregnancy. "Kim, congratulations. Now we are going to be grandparents." My mother was touched, and my father said it very emotionally. Then my mom asked me, "By the way, Kim, have you decided where to go for the birth?" I honestly answered my mom, "I haven't decided yet." Then Mom suggested, "Why don't you go to the maternity hospital where your friend works? They took care of me there when I was pregnant." "Okay, I'll go to that clinic." I agreed to my mom's suggestion. I thought our lives would be happier. But I heard it. I heard it. I never expected anyone to overhear our conversation. The next day, I started going to the gynecological clinic my mom recommended. The staff at the clinic were very helpful, and I was truly grateful to my mom for recommending it to me. However, a few weeks after I started visiting the hospital, something happened. That day, I came to the hospital for a routine checkup with my husband, Greg. We were going to find out the results of the examination together, but when I was called alone, "Mrs. Kim Clarkson, please come to the consultation room," I was puzzled. But when I saw the nurse who had come to collect me, I knew straight away. "Kim, it's been a while." The nurse who came was Jocelyn, a friend from middle school and also a classmate my mother had mentioned. "Jocelyn, long time no see." I smiled too. It seemed like Jocelyn had come to congratulate me. "Kim, congratulations on your pregnancy. I've been on night shifts, so I didn't have a chance to greet you." "Sorry about that," I smiled and said to Jocelyn, No, that's fine. I chose this clinic because my mother told me how much she was helped during her delivery here." "Really? Say hello to your mother, Cindy, for me." Later, we chatted for a while about trivial things, and then Jocelyn asked me this question: "By the way, is your husband with you today?" I was surprised by the sudden question, but answered properly, "Yes, he always accompanies me to the checkups, and I'm really grateful for that." Then Jocelyn suddenly changed her tone and whispered to me, "You know, Kim, I really didn't want to say this." Jocelyn seemed reluctant, but she made up her mind and said this to me: "You should divorce your husband as soon as possible." I was full of questions in my head. I didn't understand what she meant. But the next words Jocelyn said shocked me. "Actually, when I was leaving my night shift, I saw your sister Tiffany with your husband, Greg." At first, I thought Tiffany was just on a date, but then I heard Tiffany say, "I wish Kim would have a miscarriage. Don't you think so, Greg?" I couldn't believe what Jocelyn was telling me. Greg was with Tiffany, and Tiffany wished me to have a miscarriage. They still couldn't accept it. Just from hearing this, full of doubt, I went back to where Greg was. How did it go? I was startled by Greg's words. They said everything is fine." No, that can't be right. After all, this is Greg who cares about me so much. He couldn't be cheating on me with Tiffany. With these thoughts, we headed home. But if what Jocelyn said was true, what should I do? Later, I went to talk to my mother. I reported to her what Jocelyn had told me at the hospital. Then, after thinking for a while, my mother said this to me. I understand how you feel, Kim, thinking that Greg wouldn't cheat with Tiffany. But I don't think Jocelyn would lie about something like this. Yeah, I think so too. And I've been careful not to let Greg meet Tiffany because she has taken my boyfriends away from me many times before. After pondering, my mother made a suggestion. Maybe you should have a detective agency investigate this. We won't know until we do that. Indeed, without knowing the truth, my future married life might be affected. I trusted my husband and asked my mother to have the detective investigate this. A few days later, the results came in. What? No way! The moment I heard the results, my mind went blank. The results were terrible. There was a lot of evidence that Tiffany and Greg were having an affair. Moreover, there was audio evidence, and its content was, I never expected Tiffany to be there at Kim's pregnancy announcement. Yes, I was there, but it's good since Kim gave birth. I had no one to pay attention to me. I'm glad you came to me, Tiffany. Right. But if Kim gets pregnant, I won't be able to hang around with you anymore. I wish Kim would have a miscarriage. Well, Kim is a naive fool who trusts me. If I make up a plausible lie like being busy with work, it'll probably work out. But who would have thought the Greg that Kay trusted would love me? She's really a pitiful person. Hey, it was you, Tiffany, who approached me first, right? I didn't want to listen anymore and stopped the audio. Then I cried in front of my mother. You're kidding. Tiffany was there at my pregnancy announcement? My mother said this to me. Actually, there were a few times when Greg visited when you weren't here. Maybe that's when Tiffany approached him. If I had stopped it then, I'm sorry. My mother apologized, but it wasn't her fault at all. The real culprits were Greg and Tiffany, who had the affair. I thought I had to punish these two. Mom, I feel so frustrated. I want to give these two the punishment they deserve. Hearing this, my mother said, I understand, but remember this. I am on your side, Kim. I did tell Tiffany not to do such things, but in the end, she didn't grow up. So I also have a plan. Then my mother shared her strategy and a shocking fact. I was surprised, but at the same time, I thought we had to punish not only Tiffany and Greg, but one more person. On the day of executing the plan, I went to my parents' house with Greg. We had told Greg and Tiffany that it was a party to celebrate the baby's birth, inviting them and my sister. Wow, Kim has a sister. I didn't know that. I should greet her properly. I called him a liar in my heart and headed to my parents' house. Soon I would make these two fall into hell. Upon arriving at home, Greg turned pale, my sister looked moody, and my mother was stern-faced. My father seemed flustered. I got straight to the point, Greg. I'm divorcing you. Greg was confused and acted suspiciously. Wait a minute. I don't understand what you're saying. I answered calmly. Greg, to think you had an affair with my sister. However, Greg denied it. Wait, I've never met your sister Kim. I presented all the evidence collected by the detective agency in front of Greg. Hey, this must be a joke. Greg's face turned pale in an instant. Of course, I wasn't joking about the evidence. I let Greg and Tiffany hear their entire conversation. I can't believe you were okay with me getting a miscarriage. No, that was Tiffany's idea. Then Tiffany, looking in a bad mood, joined the conversation. If only Kim had paid more attention to Greg, none of this would have happened. Instead of only caring for the baby, she should have looked after Greg, too. My mother scolded Tiffany sharply, but Tiffany's excuses didn't stop. It's unfair that only Kim got to marry and be happy. Men never come to me, but such a handsome guy goes to Kim. That's just not fair. I was irritated but spoke coldly to my sister. The reason you're not popular with men is that you keep changing them so often. It's your own fault. Shut up. Tiffany was angry at my words, but I wasn't scared at all. So I coldly said to Tiffany, I'm divorcing Greg. You can do whatever you want with him, but make sure to pay the compensation for the affair. At my words, Tiffany smirked. Fine by me. Greg will pay the compensation, so no worries. I told Tiffany a fact that she was blissfully unaware of. Don't expect Greg to pay your compensation. It's useless. After all, I earn more than him, even though we work at the same place. and Greg will definitely lose his job over this affair. He'll have enough trouble paying his own compensation. At that, Tiffany, who had seemed so confident, started to panic. Wait, what? Hey, Greg, is it true you can only pay for your own compensation? Greg, looking embarrassed, apologized to Tiffany. Sorry, I hardly have any savings. Then Tiffany turned to our parents for help. Mom, Dad, please, I need money. Well, I think it's fine, he said quietly. But my mother glared at him and said this, Why are you always so lenient with Tiffany? Well, I feel bad for her, my mother told my father. Tiffany is an adult. She has to take responsibility for her actions. But he was about to say something, but my mother continued. Are you trying to protect Tiffany because you did something similar? In your case, it's worse than Tiffany's. You fathered a child with your mistress. At this, Tiffany reacted, Wait a minute, am I not Mom's daughter? My mother stepped away from the living room for a moment to guess something. When she returned, she showed it to Tiffany. The document was a paternity test to determine if Mother and Tiffany were related. Seeing the results, Tiffany was dumbfounded. We're not blood related at all. As Tiffany stood there in shock, Mother revealed the truth. You are the child of your father's affair from a few years ago. But the moment the affair was exposed, the woman fled. I wanted to divorce her father, but it wasn't the child's fault, so I decided to raise you properly. When Mother told me this fact, I was surprised. It's true that we were sisters, but we didn't look alike and our personalities were the complete opposite. At the same time, I realized that Tiffany's bad behavior towards men was inherited from the woman my father had an affair with. It just goes to show, like parent, like child. I guess some deep-rooted flaws just can't be fixed. The mother said this to Tiffany, I'm going to divorce your father, so do whatever you want. After that, Father panicked and said this, Wait, please, let's not talk about divorce. We've been together for so long. The only reason I didn't divorce you was for the children's sake. I thought I'd feel bad and guilty for them to grow up without a father. But I had no love left for you. Kim and Tiffany are grown up now. Is there any meaning in us staying married? I want nothing more, so please, let's get divorced. Mother coldly responded to Father's words. Then Tiffany turned to Father. Then Dad, you have to sort out the compensation. However, Father said this to Tiffany. Tiffany, I've already stretched myself. Then paying for your university, I don't have any more money. What? I already spent that money on having fun, looking at Tiffany and Father. I was just astounded. Then I said to Greg, you have to pay Tiffany's share of the compensation too. Following this, Tiffany and Greg apologized to me. Kim, I'm sorry. It was just a moment of weakness. Please forgive me. Kim, I was wrong too. Please forgive me. I had had enough of their superficial apologies. Enough you two are responsible for all of this. I can't forgive you for making such cruel remarks about my baby. Seeing me angry, both of them let out a small scream. To them I said, Tiffany, your actions have come back to haunt you, so learn from this and never come near me again. Greg, please sign the divorce papers quickly. If you argue, I'll take this to court. They were crying, but I ignored them, and so did Mother. Your father and I are getting divorced. If you have anything to say, talk through a lawyer. The mother looked at me and said this, Kim, I'm sorry for everything. I should have told you sooner. No, it's okay. It's because of you, Mom, that I could think about divorce. I need to thank Jocelyn, too. The mother and I left the house. Thus, my family fell apart. Afterward, I divorced Greg, and Mother divorced Father. Greg apparently resigned from his job after this affair was exposed at his workplace. Also, Tiffany didn't go to the university anymore. She had spent her tuition fees on fun, so she had to drop out due to insufficient credits. Tiffany and Greg ended up marrying, and my father moved in with them. But they couldn't live on Father's income alone. And despite their efforts to find stable jobs, they couldn't find any due to the current economy. Even the jobs they did find were in terrible working conditions, leaving them worn out. Now the three of them constantly argue over who is the worst, almost on the verge of falling apart. As for me, I think they're all as bad as each other, and what happens to them is none of my concern. Meanwhile, Cindy, Kim safely gave birth. Really? Congratulations, Kim. Thanks to Mother and Jocelyn, I safely gave birth to a girl. Being a single parent will be tough, but with Mother and John's support, I decided to rely on them. It's good to love a child, but spoiling them too much isn't. Learning from what happened with Tiffany, I decided to raise my daughter properly.